The following is a Space Day New York presentation from May 25th, 2023, regarding the 2024 total solar eclipse. This presentation features Rochester Museum and Science Center Eclipse Coordinator Dan Schneiderman. To learn more about the RMSC, their fantastic efforts regarding the 2024 eclipse, please visit rochestereclipse2024.org. Thank you very much for joining us and enjoy the presentation.
All right, cool. Well, welcome everybody to this Space Day New York event. This is the inaugural Space Day New York, hosted by Empire Space. We are the research cheerleaders, I guess you could call us, for the New York space ecosystem. If it has anything to do with space or aerospace in the state of New York, we want to know about it, we want to promote it, we want to help it grow so we can attract more of that activity in the future. Space Day is intended to be an annual event that takes place on the anniversary of JFK's moon speech. That was the day that kicked off the Apollo program, the lunar landers of which were built here in New York. We think it's one of our proudest and most unheralded contributions to the space age. So Space Day is an opportunity to kind of highlight that past, network among the people who are operating in the sector today, but also to talk about exciting things and build capacity for the future. One of the very exciting things that's going to be happening in our future next year on April 8th, a total solar eclipse is going to be moving through large swaths of Western and upstate New York. It's a once in a generation astronomical event. It promises to not only be spectacular in terms of just what it is, but it will have a number of really real world impacts for us. To talk about that, is Dan Schneiderman. He is the eclipse guru at the Rochester Museum and Science Center up in the Finger Lakes. They have been doing a lot of really fantastic programming and work for at least, I think, the last 2 years now. It's really
much longer
than that. So they've been doing a lot of, it really has been tremendous to watch the community building and the networking and the involving of groups who would typically have nothing to do with space and astronomy, government partners, community partners, watching them build out a media strategy and watching it crop up in the community. It really has been fantastic to watch. I think that template has a lot of implications for other, statewide astronomy, STEM, science events. So I don't see this so much as a one-off, although I know Dan's, day ends April 8th of next year, but I think that there's a model and implication for other statewide space events here. So yeah, Dan's going to present a little bit. He and I will engage. I have some questions for him. We will open it up to the floor. So if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll kind of bookmark those and we'll circle back to folks later on. But right now I'm going to turn it over to Dan to start us off.
Thanks, and thanks for having me today. So to give a little backstory about the upcoming total solar eclipse in the RMSC. So here at the RMSC, we have the Strassenberg Planetarium, and our planetarium director, Steve Fentress, has been talking about the eclipse as far back as 2012, or at least that's the earliest I've been able to track down him mentioning it in either a presentation, in a planetarium show, what have you. And really, Rochester started preparing for the eclipse back in 2017, right after the last total solar eclipse here in the United States. So after that eclipse, we got a lot of local representation excited, and a couple key task force members started coming together. Deb Ross from Kids Out and About, who was originally an eclipse skeptic and became excited. We had the Genesee Transportation Council, and of course we had the Rochester Museum and Science Center getting really excited for years already, knowing that this was coming down the line. So, back in 2018, 2019, a task force got started, and then that led down the rabbit hole of what we've been up to today. To take a look at the total solar eclipse from the New York State view overall, so April 8th, 2024, we will be experiencing a total solar eclipse for the first time in New York State since 1925. To give you an idea of what the path will look like, here is the official NASA map for the eclipse. So you'll notice two lines on here. So we have the annular solar eclipse that's taking place on October 14th this year. for which here in New York State, at best, I think we get 30% of the sun covered. But the big story really is that April 8th, 2024. So that path starts down in Mexico, moves its way out through Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, a little bit of Pennsylvania, but then New York State. And to give you a different idea, share, see if I have the right thing open. I am going to, I'm just going to share my entire screen so I can hop between things. If you are to look at this map, this is actually one of my favorite maps to work with because it's easy to use and it's fully interactive. Anywhere in this dark red path gets to experience totality. And that means it, starts all the way down and moves up. And to give you a quick idea, and we don't need sound for this, and there's no sound in this, in about a 10-minute period, totality will cover Western New York, the Finger Lakes, it'll hit the Adirondacks, and then it will pop right back out. So to give you an idea about time frame, here in Rochester, the moon will start to pass in front of the sun at about 2:07 p.m. and then totality will start at about 3:20 p.m. Here in Rochester, it'll last for 3 minutes and 38 seconds. And then the moon will finish passing over the sun at about 4:33 p.m. Inside that path, there's about 3.75 to 4 million New York State residents living in the path. And here in the greater Rochester region, we're expecting anywhere between 300 and 500,000 additional visitors. But if you are to look at the wider area, according to the DOT, between Niagara Falls and Syracuse, New York State could see upwards of 1 million additional visitors. So this is no small number. It's, activating, people. It's getting everyone excited. I mean, we're seeing visitors. We're having people locally get involved. Here in the greater Rochester region, we have about 400 to 500 different organizations that we've been partnering with stakeholders. We've been getting to introduce astronomy to, everything from senior homes to the YMCA, chocolatiers, breweries, wineries, cideries. I think of the Finger Lakes being such a wine-heavy area, and we're heavily working with them. We have people all over getting involved. I know I'm kind of jumping around, but there's a lot to cover for the eclipse. It's really so many people because one of the things that I tend to say over and over to the point of almost becoming a catchphrase is that literally everyone under the sun is a stakeholder in this eclipse. Last time it happened here was 1925, and we don't get it in the US again, really, till in the continental US, till 2044 for a little bit, and slightly bigger in 2045. But New York State, we won't experience this again till 2079. And, in parts of New York State, like here in Rochester, we don't get to see a total solar eclipse until 2144. 120 years from now. This is not even a once in a lifetime situation. This is a once in multiple generation situation. But even if a kid was born on the day of that 2024 total solar eclipse, their grandkid's grandkid would be able to see that next total solar eclipse here in Rochester. It is that long period of time. And so, I mean, everyone in the US is starting to get excited. We know people are going to travel. If you are to look at 2017 as an example, people traveled, from all over the world. You could see people traveling, anywhere between 5 and 11 hours away just within the US because it is such a rare opportunity to have in our own backyard. Technically, solar eclipses happen about like 2 times a year, and total solar eclipses happen anywhere between 18 and 24 months. But Earth is big. There's a lot of water on the surface. There's a lot of things you would have to really travel for it. But to get it for right here is incredible. To give you an idea about some of the other folks involved across the state, so We have seen everyone get involved, everything from New York State out of the governor's level, where I do know that they have an interagency task force. I Love New York has really been at the front of that, as has the Economic Development Council, a lot of tourism. I know the DEC, DOT, a lot of the Thruway folks are involved because, as you look at this map, there's two things that connect a good chunk of us. One being I-90, and the other being the Erie Canal. Erie Canal, I like tossing in there as another mode of transportation, but imagine I-90 going through most of New York State and being within that path. And so we have a lot of traffic issues that we have to worry about. There's a lot of, making sure that there's enough supplies for everyone. I'm expecting a lot of people to come up and stay in the Finger Lakes and Southern Tier. I wouldn't be surprised if we even have a lot of people staying in Albany and moving their way over. So, we have I Love New York. We have Rochester, which has been running this Eclipse website since, I remember, 1,500 days on this website, which had to be 2019. But you'll find folks in Buffalo. I know Niagara Falls is working on a viewing spot for which the Eclipse should be right over Horseshoe Falls, which will be a incredible, just a stunning view. We have different counties from the region, so we have more rural areas playing up, some of the farms here in the region. So we have Genesee the Eclipse, which their Eclipse glasses actually do have a cow print on the front of their glasses. You have the Adirondacks preparing. Livingston County, Lake Placid. We have the Thousand Islands. Everyone is getting excited and getting ready for the eclipse. At another local scale, we have art that's connecting all of us. So here in New York State, we are incredibly lucky to have an astronomer and artist, Tyler Nordgren, who has developed posters for New York State parks in the past, but also national parks for NASA. He's done a lot of works with the campaign to visit national parks, especially after dark, for stargazing. And he did a lot of the eclipse posters back in 2017 and other eclipses that have happened all over the world since then. But with him being in New York State, he has done ones for Rochester. He has done Buffalo, which I do love the Let's Go Buffalo mixed in. You can find his work covering Niagara Falls. And he's covered the Erie Canal, especially as it will follow a good chunk of that path, and the Finger Lakes as well. So you'll find his artwork everywhere. Of other programs that I love that we're bringing in different members, here at the RMSC, we've launched this Community Eclipse Ambassador Program, thanks to Science Sandbox, where we've brought on over 50 organizations from across our 9-county region to go out into their own communities and start talking about the eclipse and getting everyone excited. So, I mean, these communities include everything from NTID, Autism Up. We've had one of the boats on the Erie Canal step up. We've had our YMCA, YWCA, our Scouts, we've got Chocolatiers, a church, a temple, a mosque, all sorts of folks, just so that they can go out into their own communities and get everyone excited. I know here in the greater Finger Lakes region, and I know some folks in Buffalo and Syracuse have done this as well, we've actually canceled school that day, or got school canceled that day. Because here in New York State, with totality being around 320, or, up in the Adirondacks around 327, well, we don't want kids on buses at that time. You don't want these kids missing out, especially knowing that they will never get to experience a total solar eclipse here in New York State again until 2079. So whatever we can do to make it as accessible as possible and prevent them from being stuck on buses, the better. And admittedly, if you're to look back at 2017, you will hear the unfortunate stories of kids being kept inside at schools, just due to concerns of safety. The thing is, a total solar eclipse is completely safe. There's nothing different about the sun, nothing different about the moon. You just have to be, wearing the proper safety equipment when looking up at the sun, as you would do on any other day. I mean, that's why we have Eclipse glasses, and we're working on distributing 400 to 500,000 of them in this region. But getting schools canceled that day is this great opportunity for them to come to the community, to work with the rec centers, and for people to go connect with their neighborhoods. One of the great things about a total solar eclipse is it's one of the greatest shared positive events you'll ever get to experience. We as the Earth just went through a not so great negative experience, but when was the last time you went through a positive shared experience that literally millions of people around you got to share? When I think of that, there's only one that comes to mind, and honestly wasn't alive for it, which was, when we landed on the moon. Space has this great way of uniting all of us as we all get to look up, we all get to share. Technically during totality, everyone can just look up. You don't need any special equipment. And anyone can look up at night. It's one of those great sciences that the bare minimum of entry is just being able to look up. And so it's great that we get to share this experience. I think from here, I know I kind of jumped around a bunch of topics, but I was wondering if anyone had any questions to kind of start diving into. There's a lot of different topics. Even New York State history. I love looking at the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, which was actually founded under a total solar eclipse. There's a lot here to play with.
No, that was fantastic. Thank you for that comprehensive introduction. I never, I've heard you talk about the eclipse a bunch of times now. It's always fantastic to just hear about the scale of it. I guess my first question was kind of going back to 2017, building this kind of network, hundreds of organizations, the vast majority of which do not have an innate interest in space. Like, how did that process start? How did you identify like your first contacts? Like, who did you identify the people you needed to reach out to first? And then how did you kind of level it out from there and develop those mechanisms to justify it to people who work in transportation or something, and they're like, I worry about highways. Why are you talking to me about the sun? So just kind of explain how you started that off.
So thankfully, our stakeholder group started off heavily connected to the Visit Rochester's Visitor Industry Council. So this is something that our tourism bureau does once a month, is bring a lot of these different stakeholders together. And these are attractions, these are museums, restaurants, hotels. They have these meetings every month. And so, we started sprinkling in little bits about the eclipse back in like 2017, 2018, saying, hey, it's coming. And then just kind of kicking it off with larger stakeholder meetings. And it's a lot of trying to think through, how do you reach everyone? So literally my entire job at the museum is just the eclipse. And during the first 2 weeks, I, thought about, our metro population of, we have 1.1 million people living in this region. How do you reach that many people at once? So you start breaking down the different groups. You think, okay, we have to go and reach out to all the schools. How do you get school canceled? Do you go through the New York State regions, which we did attempt? We went through the school board associations. We talked to different superintendents, and a mix of that ended up working. The religious organizations, you try and find the associations. You just have to get out in front of a lot of people, and it's a lot of cold calling. But I think the thing that helps is talking about how rare of an event it is. It does help that 2017 already happened and that people somewhat remember it, that it happened. And a number of people thankfully traveled for it. When chatting with I Love New York at the start, I found out that their head for the eclipse had already experienced totality twice in their lifetime. Once in 2017 and then once in Argentina, which I think was in 2019. I could be off. So sometimes these pitches were really easy, talking about the tourism aspect, talking about the unique experience. When it comes to transportation, all we had to say was how many people were coming in. But I think the thing that gets everyone interested is that it's a cool experience. It's a great way to start getting their toes dipped into the science and dip more into space. You just kind of need to figure out that on ramp. Otherwise, a lot of people have also, as it's starting to get out to people are reaching out to us. Of things I wasn't expecting to have conversations with is Mount Hope Cemetery to be used as a viewing event location, but also doing they do tours of famous graves, and we're talking about doing a tour of people buried there related to astronomy. So, astronomers from the 1800s or the founders of observatories in the region, all the optics. So once you start talking to people, it just kind of starts building up.
That's fantastic. It really is a unique event that can bring such a broad spectrum of organizations together. And I know you had touched on it in your opening, but the ambassador program that you just rolled out, I didn't know if you could kind of specifically kind of highlight that again, just because I think it's so cool.
Yeah.
So kind of how you found them, how you put that together, what exactly they're doing. I know you've had some training sessions with them.
So the ambassador program was originally inspired by this program out of Philadelphia, their Night Sky program, where they brought 50 different organizations from across their city and got them trained on telescope viewing and did a ton of sidewalk observing. So it's a similar version to that, where we have been pitching this program for a while. We got the funding from Science Sandbox, but the idea was, let's try and spread out as many people as possible and really decentralize the eclipse. We know people are going to come to the RMSC, but we want people to also go to their neighborhoods, to other museums. This many people involved, you got to really spread it out. And so over maybe a good 6 months, we had built up this, initial list of people to reach out to, community partners, people who you see doing a lot of active good, the networks of networks, a lot of that type of thing. And then, we also thought about our demographics of wanting to hit certain people. Eclipses are sensory heavy events. The temperature will drop 10 degrees. It'll get dark out, not quite midnight, but it's a pretty sensory heavy thing. So we wanted to work with the autism community. We wanted to hit the religious communities. It's took that initial list and then asking friends of friends who might be good suggestions. And then we opened it up to the public. Admittedly, I thought I was going to be pulling teeth getting people to sign up. And then we ended up with over 160 applications. And it was rough trying to narrow all this down. One of the ways that we did is, we have our two local library systems, so Monroe and the OWL library system, which covers multiple counties. So, any libraries we kind of grouped up together and said, hey, we would love to work with you, but we can only work with the overall org. Or, same thing for Scouts. We couldn't do any, formal education, but we were able to work with after-school groups, so we did that as we could. And then the great thing about this program is I am really excited with the materials that we get to give each of them. So every organization receives their own telescope, solar filter, sun, moon, earth model, 2 colanders, which are used for pinhole viewing, 1,000 stickers, 500 postcards, hoodies like this one, which just came in today, patches, whatever handouts, 3.5, 4-hour training, and $1,000 each to their organization, and $1,000 glasses for each organization to give out to their communities. So that, they can go, we know that we can't reach everyone, and we know that the people who are the best spokespeople are the ones who are already integrated into their own communities. And it's led to some fun discussions about, we now are in the process of finalizing getting our materials translated into Spanish, thanks to one of our ambassadors who stepped up. We are doing a little bit of digging of the impact of totality on those who deal with sundowning, where we don't know if it will affect them, because sometimes it's based on light and not tiredness, which we hadn't really thought about until this ambassador group. So
Interesting.
a new area to dig.
I was
Yeah.
curious. I wanted to follow up on that real quick. Just being a fellow Rochester, I know we have a lot of we're like a refugee and resettlement community, so I didn't know what kind of work, that kind of culture, how deliberate you have to be. Is that something where you found you could find those networks, or do you have to be a little bit more deliberate and a little bit more granular when it comes to that type of outreach?
It's a mixture of both, where we had to search out certain networks. You had to find the individual organizations. And I mean, thankfully, we took a lot of suggestions from, community partners that the RMSC has been working with for years. But a lot of it was just, hey, we know this person at United Way. Can you do an introduction to this person in this network? That type of thing. It was a lot of recommendations and asking people to help spread the word.
All right, I have one more question from me. So if anyone else has questions or thoughts, you can start mulling on that. You can either write out something in the chat, and Dan can just take it, or we'll just open it up after that. So I guess finally, if you could just paint a little bit of a picture of what's actually going to happen, that day, starting at 3:12 or 3:15, wherever you are in the state, for that next 10 minutes. Like, what is, because I've never had the joy of experiencing one before. So what is that actually going to be like?
Funny enough, I haven't either. So I've seen two partial solar eclipses, and a number of lunar eclipses, but never a total. So what will happen that day? At 2:07, the moon will slowly pass in front of the sun, and my guess is about 10, 15 minutes before totality, you'll start to really notice that it's getting darker. Shadows will become a bit sharper. That's when the temperature drop will really start to kick in. You'll have a 300-degree sunset start to appear. And in the seconds before totality, you'll actually see some light dancing around the moon, as long as you're wearing eclipse glasses. And this is Bailey's beads, where because the moon isn't a completely smooth surface, it's full of ridges, you'll see the light kind of dancing along the edges just in the last few seconds before the moon completely blocks out the sun. During that time, you'll actually be able to see a couple planets. Jupiter and Venus should be fairly easy to see, along with some constellations. I think of Orion. Orion will be easily visible. And when it comes to what you personally will experience, I mean, I've heard so many different answers over the years of, people breaking down and crying, people laughing. If you're in a crowd, you'll just start hearing a lot of cheering. There's a human reaction of like the hair on the back of your neck will stand up, where it's almost flight or fight, because it's such an unusual experience. I've heard of people just holding their hands tightly with loved ones, or other people saying that they completely ignore everything else around them, and it's just them, the sun, the moon, the earth, and the universe. And it just kind of all focuses down on that little moment. It's just a very personal experience. It's, for some people it's spiritual, for some people it's just pure delight. Admittedly, I'm probably going to start crying at the sight of it. I don't know if that'll be from, the view, or, just getting to that point after years of working on it. And, the one thing I recommend to everyone for totality is think about who you want to be with during that moment. You're going to want to be with your loved ones, your friends, your family. At that point, I'm personally hoping on being next to my wife and holding my daughter, will be 2 years and 2 months old. It's that moment will be cemented into your memory forever. And I mean, if you were to say to a lot of people, where were you during the 2017 total solar eclipse, they will remember it. They'll remember the sights, the sounds, the people that they met that day, the family that they were with. It's a very personal experience.
Thank you for that. That was a very vivid description. So I guess any questions from the floor? Everyone should be able to unmute and ask questions or write them out in the chat. So now we will turn it over to the audience to see what they have. Anyone?
So this is my first like Space New York or Empire Space event. Is this something that happens every year, or because it's just coincidental that I found y'all? Because last week I was looking for a space-oriented community, or even 2 weeks ago, and I got in contact with someone on Twitter who's like a new space consultant, and she directed me to a company that focuses on investing in commercial space, but that their meetup is now defunct. And so I was all confused, and it just randomly y'all popped up on Twitter. It was just so weird. Like the algorithms are so weird.
I'm very glad that we randomly popped up on Twitter. So Empire Space has been operational for about 2 years. Evan and I got connected back in it seems much longer than it is, but it is just about 2.5 years ago, and both looking to kind of expand the space ecosystem here in New York. My background is in politics and government. His background is in aerospace engineering. And eventually we came around to earlier this year, we were seeing other states have their space days. Florida has one, Texas has one. It's usually a big statewide, it's a rah-rah, industry comes together. It's usually a lobbying day. You know, they go to the legislature, ask for X, Y, Z. And we were thinking, New York doesn't have one of those. New York doesn't have that kind of statewide focus, that kind of, you know, lighthouse event where everyone's aware that it's happening. That's kind of emblematic of the space ecosystem in the state as a whole. We have a lot going on here in New York. You know, we are a top 10, top 15, top 20 space state, but it's very fragmented. There's not a lot of self-awareness. There's not a lot of promotion. So Space Day was conceptualized as an event to try to tackle some of that, to bring people together from across the state, regardless of if you work for a space company, if you're just interested and happen to be a person who's interested, come together, have a wide range of events. We participated in an event earlier with SSPI WISE. It's a group of satellite professionals that works with WISE is their Women Empowerment in Space group. We have another event coming up with right after this with Copernic Space. They work in digital assets, so kind of that financial marketplace. We have a STEAM workshop at 4 p.m. and then we'll have a general town hall at 6. So kind of diversity of events, open to a diversity of backgrounds, anyone and everyone who's interested in space, just kind of celebrating the stuff that we've done before, and then the awesome things that are coming up in the future. So yeah, that's a little bit about who we are and how this happened. We hope for this to be an annual event. May 25th is the anniversary of JFK's moon speech, so we think that's a good date. So we are hoping that May 25th every year becomes known as Space Day New York. People will know that there is space programming somewhere that day, virtual, in person, and hope that it just kind of grows from there.
Cool.
Yeah, that was my question, right? Are you folks looking to do things in person? You know, I personally find a lot of value in that. You know, being from New York myself, I used to live in New York City. I then moved about an hour north of the city in Westchester County. But yeah, I didn't realize, you know, I've been looking for space organizations within New York as well. Through SSPI is how I found out about this, because I'm a member there. I sit on their business roundtables, and I was also at the Luxembourg House Space event in New York City. Yeah, a few weeks ago. So, you know, I'm right in New York. I mean, I'd love to offer my assistance, you know, to you folks if you ever want to partner on, you know, events or networking. You know, we can take that offline. But yeah, no, this is really cool. This is really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we would love that. I'm Patrick at empirespace.org. My co-founder Evan is on the call. He's Evan at empirespace.org. please
Yeah.
feel free to reach out, find us on LinkedIn. We aim to be accessible and engageable. I don't know if that's really a word, but we'll make it.
No, that's awesome. You know, I also come from a pretty unique background where, you know, my undergrad was in business economics, and I had
Okay.
started a career in digital marketing, digital advertising for 12 years. I then went back to school for a master's in space operations from Embry-Riddle. And now I'm kind of wearing a couple hats, working in the astrodynamic field for Free Flyer. And then I also have a digital marketing consultancy where I'm transitioning to doing like aerospace consulting as well. So I'd love to, you know, introduce you folks to some people too.
No, that would be great. And it's, I think that's kind of, my background is not a traditional space background. And I think it's also kind of emblematic of New York, and particularly this event, and to kind of to circle back to Dan, just that coalition building of non-space partners is something. And I joked about it at the beginning, like I know that he's glued in on April 8th, but I attended one of the first in-person session I attended at the museum, the Rochester Museum and Science Center. And when I saw the breadth of stakeholders, I'm like, this kind of partnership is unheard of for most events. I work in politics and government. Like, this kind of network, this kind of broad network across society does not happen very often in terms of the spectrum of people, senior centers to transportation departments to cemeteries, museums, everyone in between. Like, it is an unheard of coalition. My first thought is, this is awesome. Like, we can't let this go anywhere. Like, how do we carry this energy forward? I think it's a phenomenal template. And I think New York kind of has that traditional background. I think we can offer a lot of strengths in new fields, adjacent fields. You know, we're never going to be a heavy lift launch state. Like, we're not going to have, you know, Cape Kennedy Part 2 on Long Island. That's not the future we envision. But there's a lot of other fields. Data analysis, so space data, space finance. There are so many other rapidly growing fields that'll be part of the new space economy as the 21st century goes on, that we think New York could be uniquely positioned to play a role in.
No, that's huge. I mean, people don't understand how many industries have historically touched aerospace, and they don't understand the future either. You know, you look at New York, there's a lot of agriculture too in upstate New York, right? And even a lot of that technology that we're leveraging today came from space testing, right? So I think it comes down to just making people aware of how space impacts them. You know, that's the struggle of every startup, right? Is trying to get people to understand the impact.
Not going to be a struggle on April 8th, 2024.
Nope.
Everyone's going to be well aware of the impact of space then.
That is one of those great things about the Eclipse.
Should we all do introductions? Should we all introduce ourselves, like, since we're a small group? Or
yeah, sure.
Okay. So
Dan and I have already done it.
Yeah, I can do the next one. So yeah, I've lived in New York since like 2008, proper New York. I tried to move in 2006, but that fell through. So I ended up living in Jersey for a while, which was a great experience. I'm not downing Jersey. I'm more of a space enthusiast. I don't have a professional background in as an engineer or whatever, but I do typically work as an executive assistant, but I've dabbled in other industries, including the entertainment industry and hospitality industry. I organized a vegan festival back in the day. And I recently kind of joined Moondao. I don't know if you all are familiar with Moondao, and I'm still kind of learning what it's about, but they've already they planned, or they have someone who will be on a Blue Origin flight, but they're working out the logistics of that. And then they recently selected a winner to be on a zero gravity flight. So they're really serious about promoting space exploration. And we just talked about maybe having an event here in New York City, where I live in New York City. That was the other thing. Is it? So this is a statewide thing. It's not a New York City thing. Okay, that's right.
It is.
Okay.
It is statewide. As someone who is from the Finger Lakes, I am I am
Yeah.
very keen to stress that New York State is more than just New York City. That is a very keen point of focus. Nothing against New York City. I love New York City. I spent 2 years living in Brooklyn. It's a beautiful place. I met a lot of people there who, when I said upstate, you're like, oh, Westchester. And I'm like, no, not.
That's the
not
joke,
Westchester.
right? Westchester is not upstate.
It's not. It's not. It's not.
So
Anyways.
when you all talk about networking and partnerships, Moon DAO is, I think, one organization that might be interested, but we'd have to discuss further down the line.
Yeah.
And then in terms of and as I mentioned, I organize a vegan festival. And in terms of other partnerships, I think a company called Plantega, Planteg, which they make vegan based meats or whatever. But as you all start organizing these events and having catering and stuff, Plantega has a very space vibe to it. And I know it's a random thought I'm having right now, but
random thoughts are the best ones.
It's a spinoff of a bodega, right? Plantega. And then I was thinking Vega, Planet Vega, and whatever. Okay, so just those thoughts. I'm just throwing those out in the in the atmosphere.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for that. Evan, do you want to give yourself a quick shout out? You're technically the co-founder of Empire Space. We probably should have gotten you on here before we had 15 minutes left.
Yeah, sure thing, Pat. Thanks. I think I have been introduced at least a few times. Yeah, the other founder here of Empire Space already said I have a more technical background. We shared the story of founding Empire Space. So yeah, we're really here to grow the space industry. Space Day is about this year just bringing awareness, and then next year hopefully bringing some action to the space industry in New York and actually creating some change. So that's my intro. You can popcorn it or whatever. All right, I'll pick someone. Over to Chris, because he already spoke a little bit.
Yeah, guys. Yeah, let me give you a little recap again. So yeah, born and raised in New York. Actually, my undergrad was at Oneonta State University, so I'm familiar with the upstate area. Yeah, no, I love it up there, especially in the summer. It's just a beautiful area. You got Ithaca, you've got Omegang Brewery over at Cooperstown. So yeah, now I'm outside of the city. Again, kind of come from a mix of a different background. Started in digital marketing, digital advertising, spent about 5 years at IBM as well, kind of working in the cloud computing space across, again, the digital media project management side. And then, I went back to school for a master's in space operations, kind of wrapping that up now at Embry-Riddle. And in kind of parallel to that, I went two ways. I did, I opened my own digital marketing consulting practice, kind of based off my background. And what I'm trying to do now is transition that into a combined aerospace consultancy, right? Basically pulling in different individuals from my master's program, different folks that I'm networking there to kind of approach clients directly. And then my daytime role right now is at AI Solutions for their Free Flyer product, which is essentially it is a engineering software tool that allows you to put satellites into orbit. It handles satellite mission design, analysis, and operations. So I've been with those folks for about 5 months now, and yeah, really looking to build a community here. Really looking to participate and help it. You guys are nonprofits. There's a lot of free advertising dollars out there through Google, that you can take advantage of, up to $10,000 a month, which is no small chunk of change to help get your message out. So yeah, I'd love to take it offline and talk about how I could help you guys, and if there's anything I could do for the broader community, I'd always love to be assistance.
Well, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Either Serena or Rianne, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, and if you have any questions, we'd love to hear it. If not, no pressure. We don't want people to feel obligated to participate.
I can go. I'm actually born and raised in Western New York, so I live an hour south of Buffalo.
Nice.
I'm in my flight suit because I work at the Challenger Learning Center in Allegheny, New York. So we had a school group here today. So that's why I'm looking all spacey. So I just joined to kind of get an idea. Our center is actually located 20 minutes, or actually just a few minutes outside of the totality. So we're looking to do activities for kids in our area. Unfortunately, our county could not get all the schools to agree to take the day off, even though we tried. So we're still trying to figure out what we want to be offering, because some schools will be in session and some will not. So we're just looking for ideas on what to offer and how we can help our community celebrate and bring in the Challenger Center mission as we participate in Solar Eclipse Day.
Let me know if you want resources to help convince schools. I have a list, and I really tried to convince state ed to cancel class, but the state that day did not fly, no matter how much we pushed. But if you need any help with supplies, resources, give a shout.
Thank you.
I'll put my chat in the email.
Awesome. Yeah. Before we forget, because I always remember when we have like 30 seconds left. Dan, yes, website, email, where people can find you, both personally and Eclipse stuff. Generally, let's make sure we do all that.
You can personally find me at dschneiderman@rmsc.org. This is the Eclipse website for Rochester. I need to actually add in lots of links to everyone else in the state. You can also find a lot of what I work on at rmsc.org. I'm physically located at the Strassenberg Planetarium, and actually, as you mentioned, the moon landing, one thing that's I found yesterday, because our planetarium opened in 1969, a few months before the moon landing, every now and then we'll find some fun little artifact, and let's see. We found a 33 record of JFK's speech.
Oh, that is so cool.
Narrated by Walter Cronkite with other information as well.
Okay, well, that's insanely cool.
You'll find all sorts of random things in our place from 1969 going forward.
I got to spend more time there.
I swear, I'll give you the full tour of our basement, which is taking a step back in time at some point.
Yeah, no, I 100% need to do that. I also, everyone else, feel free to put your email in the chat if you'd like. I also have some of the artistry. It really is absolutely fantastic. Like, check out their website. The stuff that they've been able to put together for the Eclipse really is absolutely fantastic. And I love being able to reach out and engage people in different mediums, as well. Not everyone, listen, sometimes art is the best way to reach someone, and some of it is very captivating.
On a similar note, we'll be at a ton of festivals, and I am still pushing for there to be an Eclipse area at the New York State Fair this year.
Oh, that would be,
I am pushing still, because I have telescopes with solar filters. We'll travel. I have 10-foot inflatable suns, 6-foot wide eclipse glasses. I can just throw the most random activations to get people interested in space and looking up whenever possible. I'm actually doing some stargazing on Saturday, and then we'll start hitting more festivals later next week.
Tis the season. So we are heading into our final 5 minutes. Any final questions, thoughts, comments from
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, like, Worldview and Space Perspective are two space balloon tourism companies that are basically startups. we have like less than half a dozen abandoned airports in New York City proper. And I want to, I know that you all have a financing coming up, but I don't know. I think we could do a better job of attracting these two companies to open.
Reach out to us offline. Send us an email with some of those details. Anytime there's an interest in a space company who's interested in locating to New York, we are more than happy to provide.
I don't work for them. I don't work for them.
No, even the interest, we can reach out and do some poking around. You're right about there being a lot of abandoned airports in New York. That is very true. Cool. Well, I guess Dan, we'll turn it over to you if you have any final thoughts, closing messages, or anything that you want to share with the group.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, go outside on, well, October 14th this year for the partial eclipse, but especially April 8th next year. I mean, even at the easternmost tip of Long Island, they get like 88% of the sun being covered, which is still a fantastic view. In New York City, it's about 90%. Travel if you can. It's going to be a long time before we get this incredible sight here in New York State.
Well, Dan, I'll be in touch with you and maybe see if we can get a group from New York City to come to Rochester where you are.
I know of at least one. I'm pretty sure I've heard rumor of at least one bus, and I'm sure there's going to be even more.
Okay, so I'll be in contact with you to get that info because I definitely want to be there.
There's a lot of people coming up from the area. I've even had a company from New Jersey say that they're going to bring their entire company up just for the eclipse. Yeah, it's a lot of people traveling across New York State that day.
Also, if you need help with the New York State Fair too, like I'm surprised they didn't approve it.
It just things get done last second. But yeah.
Okay.
It's I've done work at the New York State Fair with a STEAM area, science, technology, engineering, arts, math. Things come together last second.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you all very much for joining and participating. Dan, thank you for taking the time again to speak with us and pass this along. We'll be posting this on YouTube later. I don't know how long it'll take us to get it up there, but we will get it up there. This is a fantastic conversation. Thank you to everyone who engaged and chatted along. Be sure to follow along with the RMSC and all the other Eclipse links that they posted. We'll post them around afterwards. Again, thank you all very much for joining us and have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you again for joining us for this Space Day New York presentation regarding the 2024 total solar eclipse, brought to you by Dan Schneiderman from the Rochester Museum and Science Center in the Finger Lakes region. To learn more, visit rochestereclipse2024.org. To learn more about Space Day, visit spacedayny.com. To learn more about Empire Space, join us at empirespace.org. Follow us on Twitter at EmpireSpaceNY. Thanks again for joining us. Be well.